Welcome into MJT Football. I am your host, Tony Tucker. I am joined by Joe Morley. If this is your first time to MJT Football, please consider hitting that subscribe button, jumping in these comments, joining in on some NFL topics with us. It is February 7th. We're getting into all sorts of stuff. I was just watching the Pat McAfee show before we came on, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in, like Aaron Rodgers, to a sensory deprivation, 15 seconds of complete meditation. Home. Joe!
Woo. I was so deep into meditation right there.
15 seconds. That's all you are allowed. I was, Joe, listening to McAfee interview Aaron Rodgers, and he was talking about going to this retreat style place where he's locked in complete darkness for 4 days, food, water, bathroom, but just sort of getting in touch with his feelings. And as somebody who has spent different times practicing meditation, right? Like really getting there, meditation is a great tool. It is fantastic. I recommend it to everybody out there, especially if you spend too much time on your phone. Like, put that shit away, go somewhere and be with yourself and your thoughts. It will help you tremendously personally. But what I was wondering is yesterday, Joe, we talked about on the show that Aaron Rodgers it was a foregone conclusion he was going to be a Raider. And then reports came out like, oh, no. The Jets, no matter what happens, the Jets are getting him. And now he's going to this thing. What if during this retreat in total darkness, he just hears the beckoning of it and ends up with the Miami Dolphins? How are you feeling about this before we jump into today's topics?
The whole thing was reminding me of the movie Zoolander. He's going back home. You're going to see him in the coal mine. He's like, I got the black lung pop. All that stuff. He's going to get that little phone call, and he's going to be like, God, what the hell? It's your agent. It's me. You're going to the Raiders. They've already made the trade.
Get your ass out of there. This is what has been given up for you. I do think that there's a little bit of like, it's not necessarily what they're going to get back. I think they do want to part on good ways where Aaron Rodgers does not bash them, because Aaron Rodgers is the kind of player that you would hold a grudge, and they're going to want him to come back for fans, for jersey retirements, for all of that stuff, and he's still connected to.
So the main thing is, Tony, the main thing that we're getting out of this offseason that we haven't got out of any other offseason with the Aaron Rodgers saga is it seems like the Packers are done. The Packers are going to move on, and Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are going for a split this year. And it doesn't matter if it's the Jets, Raiders, or any other team. It looks like Aaron Rodgers have already made up his decision that he is leaving the Packers for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, it's like it's time. They need to do this. They need to do the same way they did with the transition from Favre to Rodgers. They didn't know if that was going to work out. He was 6-10. That team that he got was 12-4 in the NFC Championship game the year before. The next year they went 6-10. Two of those wins were against the 0-16 Lions. They did not know for sure it was going to work out. Yeah. It worked out greatly for them, and I think you need to find out if that's going to work out with Jordan Love or not. And if somebody's willing to take all that money for a second-round pick, thank you, Aaron, for everything you did. We wish you the best. We're going to move on and see if Jordan Love is that guy that people thought he was in the draft for you.
I don't know why when you said it, Tony, and you said it's time, I wanted you to go like this. Like just bring your mic and go.
Yeah.
It's time. It's time.
Right there.
I was waiting for it. I was like, oh, here it goes. We're probably going to get fined for that. You know that, right?
Yeah. We get from Michael Buffer. Well, why don't we just get fined by him and The Rock? Because you better know your role and shut your mouth. Let's go to our first topic. Speaking of knowing your role and shutting your mouth, Sean Payton, he did it in the sort of coolest fashion I thought possible. When they asked him the questions about, Russell Wilson has trainers and he has coaches and he has, I'm unfamiliar with that. You know good and well that Sean Payton is very familiar with what happened there. And he knows, like, listen, I don't know how things were run last year. I don't know what went on, but that is not how this ship will be run. And if this guy thinks for a second that he's going to be able to, like, be elevated above the team, it's almost like, like you're a finely tuned specimen and you're getting sent to boot camp and the drill sergeant is just going to break you down to nothing to build you back up. I could see a scenario in which Sean Payton really does something similar to that, where he treats him like everybody else on the team. You're just one of 53 guys on this roster, and you will earn your way back to the superstar club. You don't just get that. You earn that here on Sean Payton's watch. What'd you think of this?
Watching it, I kind of was like, wait, has he discussed this with Russell Wilson yet? Because it was kind of like, well, yeah, I've never heard of that, but I got my coaches in here. We got our personnel in here, and there will be nobody else. And I'm like, all right, that's what. If you listen to all the teammates last year, that was one of the gripes, right? One of the things is Russell Wilson doesn't involve himself with the rest of the team, and he always is with his own coaches. Like, hell no. Now that you're talking, Tony, and I'm listening to some of your points. What if, like, he just like you said, like, he's gonna make him one of the guys, and he just starts finding Russell Wilson left and right, like, hey, you should have been here. You're wearing the wrong socks today. It's $10,000 or whatever. He just starts picking on him. But like you said, it's gonna piss Russell off so much that he goes back to being the old Russ and he starts cooking. And I don't know. I know Sean Payton and I've seen him coach before, but I've never like gotten into detail of his coaching ways and stuff like that. I've just seen it because he's never been in our division. Now we got to watch him and look at him. Maybe this is his way. He's going to break down this. I don't know how he treats star players. I don't think he's ever made somebody bigger than the team, and nobody ever should be bigger than the team. But Russell Wilson, I wouldn't be surprised now if they bring a backup quarterback in, like we thought, like a Winston or somebody, and goes, "Hey, now you got competition. We're not just going to hand you this job, Russ."
So I think that when you're great, losing is very humbling, right? Like, it is. But sometimes you think it's not just about being great. Your ego and everything has been inflated beyond that. And we saw that where almost Russ looked disconnected last year. A lot of the stuff he was doing, the multiple takes. Like, as somebody who was a former actor, Joe, you do line readings for things, but you don't want people to see it. You don't want people seeing. You just want the one take of me going, Broncos country, let's ride. Right? Because you'll be in the booth recording audio and they'll say, all right, say like you got surprised, right? And then all of a sudden you got to be like, Broncos country, let's ride. Like, they will want different things and then they will pick it. You don't release you doing different line readings of it because it seems douchey. It's just not like, we don't want to see behind the camera of how these things work. We just want to see it. All the green screen stuff, everything else that was going on. I think that the losing part humbled him. Now you also need somebody who you perceive on your level to come in and say, hey, get back in here. And Sean Payton comes from Bill Parcells. I don't think a lot of that stuff flies with Sean Payton, right? Like, that's not how it works. Bill Parcells did coach great players and did have sort of a longer leash for them. I mean, we've heard all the stories about Lawrence Taylor showing up, high and doing crazy stuff, whatever it was. There is a longer leash for greatness, but it's earned. That means that you perform on game day. And last year that was not the case. So I think that this is a good sign for the Broncos, a bad sign for the rest of the AFC West. Simply jumping in here. Go ahead.
Can Russ still come out and give fake high fives to fake fans? Like, can he still do that? Or is that a no? Is Sean Payton going to kill him?
Question again?
Can he still run out of the tunnel when there's no fans and act like he's high fiving them? That was my favorite part.
That part there is like, you're so in the zone. You know how they always, quarterbacks go like, I go through mental reps. He was going through mental reps of having fans. He was like, yeah, Russ, we love you. It's easy to get caught up in your own juice. Everybody's had that moment where they're feeling themselves, right? A lot of times for regular folks, it'll be like on a dance floor and they have a little alcohol in their system and their favorite song comes on and they start dancing like that they're all of a sudden they're the star of Step It Up 3. They're not,
Yeah.
right? But you get caught up in your own adrenaline fueled hype. And I think that he was living in that for a moment. And Sean Payton is the guy to, slap him back to reality.
So it's like walking into the lunchroom as a kid and having McDonald's while everybody else is eating school lunch, and you're just like, sup? What's up, guys? Yeah, my dad brought me a double cheeseburger. What's up?
When really, like, that's just shitty parenting. He should have made you, like a really good meal and not feeding you Mickey D's. But yeah, you do feel cool when you're the one eating the fast
then you realize, because your dad was lazy and slept in.
Have some more sloppy joes. Billy Madison reference, kids. Watch that. It's a classic comedy.
Yeah, the more I see it, Tony, the more Sean Payton's good for the Broncos, and it's not good for us.
It's great for the Broncos. It's terrible news for us, especially as Chargers fans. Simply Dab is one living out across the pond, and he says he woke up to watch the game at 2 a.m. and was tempted to go to sleep at halftime because they were crushing him. Simply Dab, as a Chargers fan, put that in the rear view. They will learn from it. They will get better. And the Kellen Moore hire is, that's a fantastic one. That is a fantastic one. Let's actually skip down to another coaching hire. We will go here to Brian Flores saying, no gracias. I'm not interested in coaching for the Cardinals and dealing with whatever this is. And he joins the Vikings. This goes along with a long line. Harrison, who's in here a lot, is a Panthers fan. They signed Evero from the Broncos. He removed his name from any head coaching. Any of the Broncos actually reports are that they wanted to keep him. Steve Wilkes goes to the 49ers. Now, the 49ers just need to sustain good defense, right? And that seems to be the bridge to getting a head coaching job. So Steve Wilkes, with what he did with the Panthers, if he continues the success, Steve Wilkes should get another shot at head coach at some point, as long as he can bury the blemish of sort of throwing the Panthers organization under the bus in some people's estimation. But with the Brian Flores hire, Joe, this to me is the piece that I think this team needed. This is a perfect marriage. Kevin O'Connell on one side, who's a head coach who looked good, with a head coach quality on the defense. The Vikings, to me, this was a tremendous move of the offseason.
Oh, I think this is going to be one of the underrated moves. Like, by the time we get to the training camp, because this happened right now, by the time we get to training camp, nobody's going to be talking about Brian Flores to the Vikings. But what cost the Vikings eventually their season? The Vikings won, 14 games, 13 games? Went all the way there and then got blown out in the playoffs because they absolutely had no defense. Adding Brian Flores, who's not just a great defensive coordinator, but somebody who's going to hold people accountable, somebody who's a mentor, somebody who's just another leader on that coaching staff. And I love it, Tony. I love it because, one, we've been talking about that division. It's up for grabs, right? Especially if Aaron Rodgers leaves. That's going to be up for grabs. So anybody who wants the division, go get it now. It's showing to me that the Minnesota Vikings, since the departure of Mike Zimmer, have been made a commitment that they want to win, and they want to win now. And this is just one of those winning pieces. But the bigger storyline is Brian Flores. He's been interviewing the last 2 years, but he's going, nope, I'm making better decisions for myself. I'm going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to learn from Mike Tomlin, and now I'm going over to Minnesota, and I'm going to build my own resume. And I'm going to get the job that I want. I'm not going to settle for no Arizona job where I have a quarterback that's a diva. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make – he's going to make his name for himself, Tony. And if it's not next year, it's going to be the year after where Brian Flores is going to have a head coaching job. And it's going to be in a better situation than what he could have had at this time.
I agree. He's going there to help Kevin O'Connell, right? So you have somebody who has head coaching experience who's coming onto your staff, and I think that's really important. Like somebody for him to lean on, but that's also young. And I would imagine that Brian Flores is a tremendous leader and somebody who rallies and gets people prepared in a way that is fantastic match for what the offense is. Like Kevin O'Connell got the job as sort of like offensive genius type, right? Like won the Super Bowl with the Rams. Now you have somebody that turned around the Dolphins defense in like 15, it felt like 15 minutes. He got there and then all of a sudden the Dolphins were winning games defensively. I got to pause for a second, Joe. Take over.
Yeah, and Brian Flores. I think the Dolphins in the last season with Brian Flores were 1-7, and then turned around and finished 8-8. They went the back end. They went 7-1. Brian Flores didn't get he got overlooked and thrown under the bus. I think in the Miami situation, and then all that's because they were looking to Miami only got rid of Brian Flores, in my opinion, because they were looking to bring in Sean Payton and Tom Brady that offseason. They got caught doing it, got thrown under the bus, all that stuff happened. But Brian Flores has been nothing but a good coach, in my opinion, as a head coach, and I would take him on any franchise. But Tony, I don't want to get into this topic, but Arizona and Indianapolis, you got to be worried. If you're a fan of them, you got to be worried.
Yeah, I think the longer it waits, it's kind of a weird situation because you could make the argument that maybe they're waiting. They're both waiting for Shane Steichen. They, both might be waiting for Eric Bieniemy or Matt Nagy or one of these, coaching candidates. Maybe even Jonathan Gannon for the Eagles. The defenses look great. Third all-time sacks in one season. Although if you talk to Eagles fans, there seems to be a lot of griping about the Eagles defense. We'll talk about that later in the week too. I think that when you look at both of these jobs, there's so much chaos that nobody really wants to take these jobs, right? So you look around and you're like, oh, well, I don't want somebody who's as erratic of an owner on one side in the Colts, and then I don't want a situation where my quarterback, who in 2 years is going to be eating up 30% of my salary cap, who doesn't seem to be interested in preparing like an NFL quarterback should, and is coming off of a knee injury, who's a mobile, undersized guy. Like, there's just a lot of risk involved. Like, Joe Anarumo, I like him for the Cardinals job, just like I liked Brian Flores for the job. Bring in somebody who seems to be a defensive, tough nose, gets along with the players, but also isn't like buddy, isn't going to let stuff slide. Like, get somebody in there that's going to bring an edge to your organization.
Yeah. But there's only 32 head coaching jobs. And if two of them are and you can't fill two of them, there's something wrong. And you need to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, what are we doing wrong that these high-profile guys or these guys like Brian Flores and D'Amico Ryans are not coming to us? They're going to other places.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot harder going forward for defensive coaches to be getting head coaching positions, right? Just because of the way the trends offensively are going, that they're going to be reaching on some offensive guys that are considered quote unquote geniuses that'll come from McVay or Shanahan trees that won't pan out. But the defensive guys are going to have to go more with like them as leaders, right? Of like sort of galvanizers, maybe more in the mold of D'Amico Ryans was for the 49ers or Robert Saleh, because the days of people hiring special teams guys like John Harbaugh, like I just don't see those coaching hires coming. That was what was so surprising about the Lions hire was Dan Campbell. It was like, he's like, I don't do X's and O's talk and whatever. It's like, come on, Dan, you've been around the NFL for 20 years. Like, football. You might not be able to be an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator, but you can talk X's and O's. Like, don't.
Dan Campbell built his staff correctly. He brought a lot of former players in, maybe not ex-coaches, but he brought a lot of people that know the game of football, that know how to prepare correctly. Like, you talk about those players that are on his staff, and you're like, okay, Mark Brunell, great, good quarterback, prepared correctly, did everything we wanted as a quarterback. He's your quarterback coach. Aaron Glenn, we all liked him as a quarterback. Like, if it's all about how you build your coaching staff as well as, and I think a lot of people make those mistakes where they might bring a coach in to be their defense coordinator, and maybe they just never match. They just go, oh, that guy's a good defense coordinator, but you don't know how he is. So I think it's all about how you build your staff. But Minnesota Vikings with Brian Flores going in the right direction. Woo! Maybe I was a year too early on the Vikings.
They are going in the right direction. I want to say what's up to Harrison. Congratulations on the Evero hire, the defense. If you guys just get that quarterback figured out, and I'm going to apologize to you. Yesterday at the end of the show, I did mess up on what division you are, right? The NFC South. Called me on it. Harrison called me on it. Called me names. Let's move.
The NFC sucks. Is that what it is?
Let's move to this topic. Tom Brady yesterday on the Herd announced that he's going to take a year off. And this is exactly what I was talking to you and Joe about during the retirement. I was hoping that he would go this route, right? Take time off, attend to family and friends and everything else that's going on in your life and have that moment before you just jump into broadcasting and it just turns out to be a total disaster. Also, too, like, if he's sitting there in the booth and he's like, what the hell am I doing in the booth? I'm watching these bums out there. Like, I can't do that. Like, I think he fully needs to be removed from the game for a year so that he has a little bit of doubt of whether or not he could still play. If he just goes straight from playing where he played pretty good this year, like he wasn't, we keep judging Tom Brady based on Tom Brady prior. We need to base Tom Brady on what's available in the league right now. And he would still be a top 12 option in the league at this point at 46 years old. So, like, Brady needs time to just sort of push the game away and do that. And I think it's good that he's not going to join the booth for a full year, maybe learn, maybe do some sort of like build a studio in there and call games. Like when I was a kid, I used to turn the volume off and I would do the top 10 highlights in there. Like I was, Stu Scott. Like that's all I wanted to do when I was a kid was be that on ESPN. I found out you had to read a teleprompter and I was like, this shit ain't going to work for me because your boy can't read for shit.
No, I like it. And I don't know what Fox is doing. I think some of this has to do with Fox as well because it's not just Tom Brady who's joining next year, who's taking a year off and then joining. There's other people, other big names from other stars like Kevin Harvick from NASCAR is not joining the booth until next fall as well when Tom Brady goes. So it's something I don't know if Fox is like making a big deal in 2024. We got all these guys coming, but I also like it because like we've seen it where like guys like Jason Witten is not a great commentator, but he went to the booth too early and then was like, I can still play. I want to go back to the field. And he went back. And I think it also works the other way where you still feel like you could play or you have that itch to be around football and it gives you the meetings, it gives you the watch the games, but you're not actually in the game. So some players can thrive off of that feeling of still being involved in the game of football and something that you love. But Tom Brady just had so many, or it seemed like he had so many personal issues, and he's been doing this for what, 23 years, Tony? That every season is football. And when has he ever taken the time to just be Tom Brady? And so I think that's a great thing for him to do as well. But yesterday, he's so bored already. He's already taking selfies.
I knew you were going to transition to Tom Brady taking topless photos and breaking the internet with him.
Like but Tom Brady is smart, Tony. He's a smart guy. And he knows that every move that he makes, somebody's watching. He knows that he can do whatever he wants and somebody's going to question it. Tom Brady can go out and walk down the street right now and be like, well, I don't know if the price is not right. And then it's going to blow up like this. And they're like, Tom Brady's talking to a mystery team trying to get him out of retirement. This guy is going to play us for the rest of the year until he actually joins the booth. Remember when any injury happened to a quarterback or any team needed a quarterback, who did everybody say? Colin Kaepernick's out there. Go ahead and call Colin Kaepernick. Well, now replace Colin Kaepernick's name and put Tom Brady's name. So anytime a quarterback goes down or there's a team that's struggling at quarterback, guess what? Tom Brady might come out of retirement to come to play for the New York Jets this week. It's going to be like that all year until we actually realize, like, hey, Tom Brady's done. He's done.
Yeah, I do think that he is done, and it would take like the perfect situation at the perfect time for it to happen, for him to be like, oh yeah, I can go. because I think that Brady will train the same way he's trained this entire offseason. I think he'll still do all of those things to where he'll keep everything going. We do have an interesting debate over here in the chat. If this is your first time to MJT, subscribe and join. Harrison and Zero going back and forth saying that Greg Olsen, the Brady, the taking time to get there is so that they can remove Greg Olsen seamlessly. I think Greg Olsen's done a tremendous job. I think he's had a big opportunity in the Super Bowl to take the next step to really provide that excitement in a memorable game. And I think we've gotten some really great Super Bowls in Arizona. We've gotten, Patriots, Seahawks, the one that ended on an interception at the end of the game. And then we had, before that, the helmet catch game where Brady was in it. So we've seen some great Super Bowls in Arizona. Maybe it's something in the desert, in the water, whatever it is. But then Zero comes back and says Tony Romo is the best, which is hilarious because CBS just said that they had an intervention for his commentating and people think he's mailing it in. And there's been reports where he's flying in last minute and not doing his homework. I personally love Tony Romo, not even for him, like, when he calls a play out and it's right and he looks like a genius, that's fine. When he gets it wrong, it's not that he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's that it's like impossible to get it 100% of the time. I love Romo for his enthusiasm. And I think at certain times it kind of waned a little bit. I would love him to stop doing so much of the hero worship as if he wasn't as good of a player in the end. Like Tony Romo reached certain heights in the NFL. Like, he was on their level. All sorts of different things go into making the greatest of all time conversation players, right? Head coaching, teammates, salary cap, like all these things. Tony Romo played the game at a super high level, but he acts like, oh, how could anybody ever, I could have never done this. Jim, are you kidding me? We're down here. There's no need for that hero stuff. Like, just call the game, be excited, allow us to be fans, like, live that moment. I still think if I had to have one game and it's a big game, who do I want to listen to? I really like Tony Romo. I'm also somebody who likes Chris Collinsworth for the most. Chris Collinsworth got on my nerves a little bit this year during some Charger games, but yes, I just want the excitement. Just be enthusiastic in your call, and I'll be fine. That's why Witten didn't pan out, and why I think Brady will be an average broadcaster.
That's why me and you are different, because I'd rather listen to somebody like Rich Gannon who gives his honest opinion.
Still taking shots at Rich Gannon.
Boom, yeah. No, but I think the better commentators, and this is what I want to see from Brady, because I don't know if Brady's going to do a good job. We know that he knows the game of football, and we've seen him do some podcasts where when he's himself, he's a good guy. But when you get into the booth, that's what, like you said, we want to. When I'm listening to a commentator, and I don't listen to a lot because some of them just get on my nerves as well. But I want somebody that's just like me, a fan just like me, and they're giving you the stats. But when there's a big play, it surprises them too. Like, oh wow, did you see that catch? Like, that's what build me up too. Get me involved in the game. I want to be there with you, and then be like, oh, this is why this happened, and don't be like, who was it? Tony Dungy and Al Michaels in the playoff game?
I was just going to say this, Joe. This is what made the Chargers-Jaguars game so much worse, was that not only was I watching my team blow a historic lead, I had to listen to Tony Dungy and Al Michaels fall asleep on the microphone for the entire second half of a game where I was like, is anybody watching this? Like, is anybody who controls the booth saying, let's get espresso shots to these guys because the Jaguars are mounting a comeback, and it doesn't seem like it. It was like a preseason game in the announcement, and I want to throw some love out there for Mark Sanchez. The dude is exciting, and he writes one-liners. Every week he comes prepared with one-liners where I'm like, dude, this guy's trying his stand-up routine during his broadcast. Mark Sanchez had me cracked up. Jonathan Vilma is a little... Jonathan Vilma will be like cursing mid-broadcast. He's a little reckless with it for mainstream. I personally love it, but Jonathan Vilma cracked me up a few times this year too. Like, just
who's grown on me a little bit is Talib.
I love it. I'm a fan of his too.
when I first saw it, I was like, "What?" This guy went from ripping chains off to now being in the booth. I've heard some of his early stuff, and it was like, and now he's like growing on me. I'm like, "Oh, Talib's calling the game. I'll listen to this."
The best advice you could give anybody who's going to join a form of entertainment is to go for it 100% and don't be afraid to fail, right? Like, you can't get up there and want to project a certain image. Just be who you are and be excited about being where you're at, right? Like, and I think maybe that's a little bit with Romo, where it's like, I'm making all this money. I could just show up and sort of mail it in. And it's like, it's really the greatest job. Every sports fan wishes that they could be that close to the action and be able to talk about it. The problem is that most sports fans don't have the vernacular, the education, the presence, the resume to pull off announcing and calling a football game for the masses. You could start a YouTube page or whatever and bring people in with your personality and do it. But when a major brand is trying to sell something, they need a certain style that's sort of vanilla, that fits
Yeah.
everywhere, but is exciting, has splashes of this and that and whatever. Like, you're making the perfect Sunday.
And that's why I could never make it, Tony, because I have the looks. I just don't have anything
Yes.
else.
Yes, you
You know?
definitely have a face for TV, the voice for radio, and the talent to be a superstar, Joe Morley. But pump the brakes. Other people need to work too. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I'll stick to YouTube, and we'll be all right.
Love it,
Maybe
love it. Let's
maybe a little
let's
bit.
go to our last topic before our Super Bowl prop. Harrison,
Yes,
promise
sir.
you there will be less math involved in today's prop. Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni was being interviewed, and he talked about the time when Andy Reid got the head coaching position of the Chiefs, and Andy Reid let him go. And I took the quote down, but you can go find it. He basically just said how much he learned from Andy Reid in his departure, in Nick Sirianni's departure from the Chiefs when he was fired. He called him in and explained to him what was going on, and kind of gave him like a little bit of a pep talk, and just said, like, reassuring him that when he got back on his feet, what he would do. And he was able to use that in his coaching, like his future head coaching experience or coaching experience from that time on. And my thought is, how's Nick Sirianni gonna do Andy Reid so dirty like that, where he takes his ex-wife, the Eagles, to the prom essentially after using his own, his advice, his mentorship, his push in that exit interview, and now he's there gonna try to steal a trophy, steal the big night from Andy Reid using his moxie. Do you think that he's genuine in these comments that he learned it, or is he just throwing it out there kind of like, yeah, I remember when Andy Reid fired me. He
I think
wants me.
he's throwing shade. I think he's throwing shade because come on, no matter how much you learn from a situation, and I'm always a big guy that, and sometimes it takes you a long time to learn. But any bad situation, you could turn and flip it into a positive situation after time. And nobody's happy to be fired, Tony. Nobody sits there and goes, you know what? Thank you, Andy Reid, for firing my ass and getting me out of the NFL, my dream job, and making me have to learn more and more. No, nobody does that. He was pissed off, and he's probably still pissed off, thinking, I'm better than half the guys on your coaching staff right now. So was it probably better for Nick Sirianni at the time, and he probably realizes it now? Yes, but no, ain't no Tony. If you sit here and go, me and you are friends right now, and you fire me, you don't think I'm gonna always be in the back of my mind going, man, F Tony. He wants to fire me. He wants to fire me. Like no matter what. And now I think he's throwing it out there. Like, look, he fired me, but look where I'm at now. Like, yeah. Oh, thanks, Andy Reid. Hey, that firing that looks good on you now, right? Look where I'm at now. Like, come on. I think it's a little bit of shade thrown at Andy Reid. Why bring it up now? Why not bring it up a long time ago and be like, yeah, I've learned a lot from Andy Reid. I was fired from him, all that. Like you could have been bringing that up for years, but you want to choose it when you're about to beat him or play him in the Super Bowl.
Yes, exactly. Andy Reid created a monster. My second Eminem lyric of the show. I do believe there is a little bit of gamesmanship in bringing up this, at this time, the week of the Super Bowl, to kind of add a little bit of spice and juice. And Sirianni feeds on that stuff, and it's fun. And he's an exciting coach. I think the Eagles are an exciting team. I wanted to put on the topic, but maybe it'll be one that I do on tomorrow's show or the day after, whenever it is, about Jeffrey Lurie starting to talk about Jalen Hurts and a contract, and it's very interesting. But let's go into our last.
Before we move on from Nick Sirianni, I took a little shot at the Carr family on Twitter. I like the Carr family, but the brothers of Derek Carr have been doing too much. Well, they went off on Nick Sirianni a couple weeks ago, and they said he's too energetic, too involved in the like too high strung on the field, and always like in the plays. Like if you ever watch Nick Sirianni, he's always yelling, he's always doing something, and he's always on the refs, which I love as a coach. I want a fiery coach like that. Well, the Carrs were like, well, he needs to calm down and just be a head coach. And I said, what should he do? Just sit there and be quiet until the organization's done with them and then throw them off the curb?
Oh, that's some shots fired there. I do think that there is a fine line between what Sirianni's doing, right, and being an adult and a professional and all that stuff. But when you're winning, you're doing everything right until you're not. That's just sort of like the Belichick, the Patriot way. They're doing everything gloriously to a dynasty, and now all of a sudden you got Mac Jones ripping the organization publicly for all the shit that made them successful and made them the ultimate dynasty in football. It's like, Mac Jones, have you opened up an NFL history book? This is all the shit that they didn't want to happen and didn't do for 2 straight decades to dominance. And a lot of that is the teammate. But yes, what's going on? This just in. Yeah, ouch, Joe. Throwing shots on the way out to Derek Carr and the family. Catch up on these comments here. Phil Simms back in the day. Harrison, are you old enough to remember Phil Simms when he was still good on the mic?
Harrison still got VHSs that he puts in.
I saw somebody sent me a video. It was either you or Mike sent me a video. Harrison looks like a young man. Dude, the Jets maybe get Lamar Jackson. I don't know. I can't see Baltimore trading him to the AFC if they were to trade him. He's definitely getting a franchise tag. Baker Mayfield goes to Tampa Bay. This is what's going to be interesting, and we've talked about it before, is that there's more vacancies than openings for these quarterback positions. Like there's more vacant quarterback jobs than qualified quarterbacks to go into those jobs. So we'll be interesting to see how that goes. Joe, Super Bowl prop.
Super Bowl prop.
No, you're not a big gambler, but today's Super Bowl prop is the first TD to be scored in a game. Right? Like,
this is our spots right here.
Yep.
Oh, so first TD to score. So we're just going off the first time, or are we going? And then
we'll just do the first column. The first TD to be scored in the Super Bowl. Who do you like it to be? And then we'll look at what kind of odds you get.
Man, that's a tough one for me. But I'm gonna go Jerick McKinnon.
Okay, Jerick McKinnon. And you see that scoring? Like, okay, let me do it. This is what I think. First touchdown of the game is 13 yards out. It's a run pass option with Kenneth Gainwell, right? Where they're able to get on the edge. Nick Bolton takes the quarterback. It's like a 3rd and short. He goes. Gainwell is able to gain the edge, scores a touchdown. Eagles up 7-0 on the second drive of the game. We got Kenneth Gainwell getting in, and I'm getting paid. What is that? 1,900? 1,900 to 1?
You're getting paid good. See, my thing is Mahomes going to be scrambling, looking deep, move out to the side, getting rushed by those defensive line, and he just flicks it in there to Jerick McKinnon for a 5-yard touchdown, and there it is.
I'm with
it. They're going to be like, did you see that flip? Patrick Mahomes, the greatest quarterback. All he did was a flick of the wrist, and it was amazing. No other quarterback in this league can do what Patrick Mahomes can do. That's how it's going to be.
I'm 100% on board with the reaction, with what I think that will happen. Harrison, appreciate you as always getting in here saying he believes it'll be Hurts on a rush TD. I love it. I definitely could see Hurts on a rush
If
TD.
you wanted to be, if you wanted to go like secure and be like, all right, I'm gonna put my money. You either put it on Hurts or you put it on Kelsey. Those are the two that you're like, okay, this is where I'm safe. This is my safe one. But we don't play safe, Tony. We go for the big money. It's go big or go the fuck home, Tony.
Exactly. And I could see a long drive for the Eagles. They come out and then they just goal line sneak it with Jalen Hurts, and it's not really that exciting. It's kind of Eagles football, backup tight end pushing him on one side and 700, pounds of guard and center combo getting into the end zone. But it's
always some random player that scores first, anyways. So we're looking at this, and I bet you nobody even on this list.
Exactly. It's Kemp, the Chiefs' fifth receiver. Justin Watson gets activated.
Quez Watkins or what? It's like,
yeah, there you go, Quez.
We're like, huh? Okay, I'll take it, I guess. But yeah, but if you're looking at this list, I mean, I want to lean towards a running back because those are probably the easiest one. But Jalen Hurts steals a lot of the running backs too, so that's a good. He going with Jalen Hurts. I don't think you can hurt either.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think Kenneth Gainwell has a big Super Bowl. He just feels like one of those players that arrives in the Super Bowl.
You're not going Boston Scott?
No, Kenneth Gainwell's been a quality player since he's gotten there. He maximizes his touches and effort. I think another one of those good running backs that came out of Memphis, right? Like Memphis has had like 4 or 5 running backs that are all solid contributors right now in the NFL. Tony Pollard, Gainwell, Darrell Henderson, Antonio Gibson. Like they got good running backs there. So, all right, that's going to wrap up today's show. I'm not sure what's going on. Potentially Mike on the mic tomorrow and myself doing a show as we lead up to hopefully our Super Bowl preview show on Saturday. If it's your first time here at MJT Football, subscribe, share it with a friend, join the conversation, and like our buddy Harrison, Zero, Simply Dab, this just in, stopping by, talking a little bit of ball with us. You ready to go meditate, Joe?
We haven't been doing that all the whole. I thought this was a whole dream right here, illusion right here.
You're right, hovering outside of our body. Anything else?
Rodgers going to the Raiders.